Hello and welcome to Rajya Sabha Television. You're watching The Big Picture with me, Frank Pereira. When Donald Trump dialed Prime Minister Narendra Modi in January, days after becoming the US president, it was a great show of bonhomie. Both were strong right-wing leaders and most people thought that they would get along well. Prime Minister Modi tweeted that he had a warm conversation with America's new president, while Trump told him that the US considers India a true friend. Even during his campaign last year, Trump had said India and the US were best friends. The bonhomie between Prime Minister Modi and Trump might thin after Trump's open criticism of India earlier this month while announcing American withdrawal from the Paris Climate Change Accord. But Trump has also shown some love to India. The shrill anti-Pakistan stance of the US now is a big step for the country, which had considered Pakistan its friend for a long time. The US is now clearly siding with India against Pakistan. Prime Minister Modi is scheduled to visit the US for a face-to-face meeting with Trump next week. On this edition of The Big Picture, we will analyze the Prime Minister's visit to the US and see if Pakistan will feature in the talks. Joining me on the program today are Vivek, Katju, former diplomat, Air Vice Marshal retired Kapil, he's a defense expert, Brigadier retired Rumel, Dahiya, strategic analyst and former Deputy Director General of IDSA. Vinod Sharma, political editor of the Hindustan Times. Thank you to all my guests for joining me on this edition of The Big Picture. Ambassador, I'd like to begin with you. What can we expect from this visit as far as Modi's visit to the US is concerned?
Well, I think as is usual in such interactions, there will be a certain focus on purely bilateral India-US issues and also an exchange of views on India's neighborhood because that the US as the preeminent power of the world has an interest in India's neighborhood, especially in the context of India's western neighborhood, because they have troops in Afghanistan and they've been involved in the longest war in Afghanistan, and whenever there is talk of Afghanistan, then Pakistan naturally comes in. So I would like to think that this will be a subject on which there will be a fairly intense exchange of views. But there's one point that I want to submit for your consideration, and that is this, that I personally don't like the word friendship among nations. I think international relations proceed on the basis of a coincidence or a congruence of interests and a divergence of interests. And the attempt is always on the part of diplomats and political leaders to try to see that the convergence increases and the divergence decreases.
Do you believe the convergence has increased now over the last few months?
I do believe that on certain bilateral issues, the convergence has increased. For example, on matters relating to investments in India, on matters relating to the strategic significance of India for the US. But I also believe that on some issues, there is a divergence that is being witnessed, and you mentioned in your opening remarks about the Paris Accord. And I think President Trump was completely out of line in the comments he made on India because he attacked the very foundations of international diplomacy as it has proceeded from 1992 on climate change.
Sure.
He misunderstood and willfully, I would imagine, misunderstood that. But as far as Afghanistan, Pakistan is concerned, there is one fact which is of some concern. Obama had talked of Af-Pak. There was some talk then of having India, Pakistan, Afghanistan, but I think India had scotched that very, very quickly, and then Holbrooke had to reconcile himself to Af-Pak. But I find that in some respected US publications, the angle being now given is that if you want to resolve Afghanistan, you've got to approach it on a South Asia basis, which will, and they're saying not only India, but also Iran. And I think that is something which the Prime Minister will have to scotch and stamp out completely.
Sure. Sure. Yes, Marshal, you wanted to make a point.
No, I firstly say, I mean, whatever has been said is absolutely on the spot. I think it's a getting to know visit. Prime Minister Modi has spoken to President Trump on 3 occasions. But the chemistry which Modi is inclined to develop with world leaders ever since he's come to power, he will attempt to build that chemistry. It's very, very important, particularly because Trump believes in transactions. Our foreign policy over the years has been built on principles and value systems and, that kind of stuff. So we have actually, Delhi has been complaining that both George Bush Jr. and Obama have been transactional by nature. But now when Mr. Modi meets Trump, he will see a self-appointed kind of proclaimer of the philosophy of transactions. Where I have a slight difficulty in trying to see some dividends will come out of it is because if you locate the current broader geostrategic construct in the Trump administration and where it stands there is complete disorder in the sense that everything is a yo-yo. He says something as a candidate, does it quite another thing.
China is a prime example.
Absolutely, and today Xi Jinping is my dear friend. That's what he says, great leader, quote unquote. Secondly, look at what he's done to West Asia and what it means to us. Ambassador talked about Iran. Today, our Chabahar project, US companies are refusing to supply components and systems for construction of that port in the fear that he might actually impose sanctions. That may not happen. Now, this is a point that Prime Minister Modi will have to convey to President Trump. Look, I have interests, you better, if you're talking about convergence. I think convergences haven't yet. Of course, minor issues, investment and all, it's a matter of doubt whether investment is a minor issue or not. But the big stuff in the overall context of multi-layered and multi-dimensional relationships in the strategic domain between India and US is taken for granted.
Okay.
But the devil is in the detail. When you do a transaction, where are you?
Right.
I mean, look at Kabul. What is he doing in Kabul? He needs Pakistan. You said, will Pakistan be sort of penalized now? I don't think so.
Sure.
Pakistan is useful to Donald Trump. He may not talk to Nawaz Sharif in Riyadh. He may issue statements off and on. But I do not see a major change because once the situation in Afghanistan is stabilized, who have the American presidents of the past gone to? Pakistan.
Sure. And that's going to continue is what you're suggesting.
That will continue.
Sure.
Plus the China factor is another one.
Mr. Sharma, do you agree with that? The contentious issues really are going to be left off the table yet again. It's going to be the smaller issues that are going to be discussed. It's just going to be a get to know each other better kind of a meeting between Trump and Modi.
Well, there's an issue on the table about which Ambassador Katju and Marshal have spoken. Those issues shall be there. I would personally feel that one must ascertain whether President Trump is a reliable negotiator. It is very important because there have been, he's given to mood swings. There have been reports that he doesn't enjoy a very cordial relationship now with his NSA, Mr. McMaster. That he's been going around saying that he's too much of a pain. His own NSA, who visited India recently to prepare ground for the visit. And on Afghanistan, there is a perception held by certain experts that there is definitive lack of interest on the part of the United States and in that region. And that has given Pakistan room to get back into maneuvering its position. And with Pakistan ceding space there, with the US ceding space there, China and Russia are bigger influences in that region. If you remember recently when the SCO meeting was held, they were advised to from both China and later from Putin as well for us to resolve the issues, but that's another matter. I think that in Afghanistan, the Pakistanis are again looking at their old, which should be now discarded, but which because that impinges on the sovereignty of a neighboring country, their strategic depth theory. They are back into that, you know. And if the interest of the Americans is not revived in Afghanistan, it could be a very difficult situation for us. But as important as this is the position of the Trump administration on H-1B visa, which is directly impacting job opportunities in the information technology sector in India and also in the United States. And that issue has to be immediately resolved because Mr. Trump has won on the promise of being a protectionist insofar as job opportunities are concerned. He is running a hugely protectionist economy, a protectionist administration. And secondly, he is also against American investments abroad. He wants investments into the United States by other countries. So his goals are diametrically opposite to the goals of our Prime Minister in the interest of our country. And I agree with Ambassador Katju that there is nothing called friendship in interstate relationship. There is no generosity, there is no emotion. It is just national interest. And our national interest, as often enunciated by the Prime Minister, is Make in India. And one will have to see how much of Make in India is possible within the four walls that is sought to be constructed by the Trump administration.
Right. Let me bring in Brigadier Rumel Dahiya into the picture as well. He's strategic analyst and former Deputy Director General of IDSA. You know, Brigadier, as far as Pakistan is concerned, from a strategic point of view, Pakistan is still extremely important for the United States, isn't it?
I don't know whether it is extremely important. You know, it has been important always from the point of view of, I mean, even during Cold War it was important. But I think it was more Pakistan that was going and beseeching Americans to help it. I think over last couple of years, America seems to have come to the conclusion that Pakistan has not delivered, whereas it has been taking all the help and support from America, but used that help and support to advance to address its own anxieties, which are never ending. So it remains anxious about India, it remains anxious about what happens in Afghanistan, but those anxieties are never coming to an end. So America seems to have given up on Pakistan in some way. And you say last year they withheld $300 million worth of coalition support funds. This year again, there is no guarantee that they will get the coalition support funds at all. The overall budget, for aiding Pakistan, it has come down. The figure has come down. The latest Pentagon report, if you read, there are 2-3 things which are very important for us to note. One, this says that India remains the most reliable partner of Afghanistan. The second thing, they say that Pakistan is the most important actor affecting Afghanistan's security. Third thing it says is that Pakistani agencies have continued to support elements which have created trouble in Afghanistan and elsewhere in the region. So my suspicion is this, that irrespective of the fact whether US President has formed fixed opinion or has formed a particular opinion about the situation over there, and if he's short on attention, for example, then he may not have the complete picture. But I think the US establishment as such has formed the picture, and that picture is going to sort of advise him on that issue. Okay. Second is H-1B visa, if you see. You see, H-1B visa, if you see yesterday's meeting that he had with the heads of various big companies, suggests that he is ready to address their concern, and which will automatically address our concern. In any case, we don't expect a head of state of another country to be looking at our interests. He'll be looking at his interests. And the congruence comes in here, that what is beneficial for our technicians is also beneficial for America. So that's going to happen. But what is most surprising, ignored generally, is this, is that Mr. Trump's opinion about the global situation, balance of power, etc.
Right.
I think he was very right, and I think only one of those sane Americans who thinks that good relations with Russia is ultimately going to be good for American interests, and that's the only way to somehow come to terms with for checking China, etc. Others don't believe because they are slaves of the Cold War. So he's
Okay.
the refreshing idea that he has, and I think there is a meeting point there.
Sure. Okay. Ambassador,
And
you
I
know,
think
the point
this,
that...
what Air Marshal Kapil Kak said about Chabahar is important as well.
Right. You know, Ambassador, point that the Brigadier is making about how the US has cut financial aid to Pakistan and how it's going to continue to do so. Drone strikes also are being, talked about in Pakistan. But how serious really is the United States to take, take Pakistan to task?
Look, there is no doubt that there is a degree of exasperation and impatience and happiness in the American establishment, especially the defense establishment, with Pakistani duplicity. And that has come out in congressional testimonies of various generals, some of which were very scathing for Pakistan. However, at the end of the day, it is not statements which matter, but what is the action that the United States is willing to take against Pakistan. Quite frankly, stopping of 300 million or 500 million, etc., doesn't impact on Pakistan because Pakistan has benefactors, and the Pakistanis know at the end of that, at the end of the day, the Americans and the West in general cannot allow Pakistan to go belly up for the simple reason that it has nuclear weapons and there is a fundamentalist situation in Pakistan, and they don't want that nuclear technology and weapons should start flowing to the wrong hands. So, what are American options in the context of Afghanistan vis-a-vis Pakistan? We've seen for the last 14 years that the Americans, whenever they, whatever they may say, at the end of the day, they've come down to the position of seeking to cajole Pakistan to get the Taliban on the table. The report that the Brigadier was referring to, I've read that this morning, in fact. And that report also says that at the end of the day, the only path in Afghanistan is political reconciliation between the Taliban and the government, the Afghan government. Now, if that is the ultimate sort of objective, then Pakistan's role is obvious. The report also sort of expresses great unhappiness at the sanctuaries which are there for the Taliban, which permit them to operate, sanctuaries in Pakistan.
Right.
But this is the crucial issue, that will we be able to persuade the Americans to take tough action to remove the sanctuaries? I tell you, I'm convinced we will not be able to do that, because that would mean putting boots on the ground in Pakistan, and the Americans will certainly not do that.
Yes.
So at the end of the day, I believe that the American policy under Trump will be much same on Pakistan as it was under Obama and under Bush. Yes, the terminology may change, the expressions may change, there may be greater unhappiness, greater rhetoric, but what I would like to see is action on the ground, and I don't see that happening. I'll be delighted if it does, but I don't see it happening.
Sure. Air Marshal, as far as Pakistan is concerned, then is it only up to India to deal with Pakistan, and can't we expect any kind of external support?
That's the truth.
Absolutely true. I think a point that needs to be brought in is both over the years, now this is not just Trump administration. I mean, we have seen Pakistan's adversarial role towards India for so long, and directly in terms of export of terrorism. 30 years problem creation in Kashmir. But what needs to be flagged is, despite this, both countries are running with the hares and hunting with the hounds, and accepting the situation. A little bit of pressure one time, remove that pressure, then give an inducement. I give you one small example. I mean, this is an Air Force example and worthy of note by our viewers.
Right.
That in 2011, the Americans, having criticized them exactly the manner in which the narrative is being unfolded here, gave them the world's most advanced air-to-air missiles, which created a whole problem for the Indian Air Force. And the problem had to be resolved through having to allocate more numbers in situations, which means a direct threat to our capacity in war fighting in a conflict. Now, this is American role, and we now say, I mean, I completely agree with this narrative which is unfolding, that A, Pakistan will continue to be on this bad behavior, B, that America will continue to mollycoddle Pakistan. And why? Because Pakistan has locale, and it has the ability to use that locale and its strategic assets, whatever those are, whether it's being an Islamic nation or whether it's in terms of utility vis-a-vis China, because China is the new card. The Eurasian politics, where Americans are least interested, in any case have no foothold, poses far bigger challenges now. I think Mr. Vinod Sharma alluded to it earlier when he was talking about SCO. I mean, the point that US President wants good relations with Russia, I mean, for God's sake, he wants good relations with Russia, not on any strategic issues. He doesn't even understand strategy. He wants good relations with Russia because Russia has had a role in his campaign, which will now come out, whether it's the courts. Now, you look at his role in State Department. State Department, most positions are still key positions are not full.
Right.
The ambassador to India is not done. You look at the Pentagon. He's at one time an internationalist, another time a nationalist, and third time the family. And how does all this balance out? I mean, even for a very dynamic leader like Modi, it's a jigsaw puzzle he can't sort out. And that's why I come back to the original point I made, that very little will come out of it.
Okay.
And you will have good chemistry, hopefully build up, so that the issues. I mean, last point on H-1Bs. 2016, the number of H-1Bs visas given to India was 9,563. That's not a large number.
Yes.
And when you talk about climate change withdrawal speech, billions and billions and billions, you know, I think viewers must know that in 2016, India got 100 million. 100 million, and the president of US is repeatedly shouting billions and billions and billions. So I'm afraid we are up against a huge challenge as far as the Trump administration is concerned, particularly in our mistaken action of doing a joint vision with President Obama almost at the fag end of his administration, which somehow raised this hope that we will balance out China with this vision for Indo-Pacific, or what's called Asia-Pacific and Indian Ocean region.
Right.
Where is it gone? He's not on board on that. So our geopolitics has actually got upended in the last 6 months, and we'll have to do a lot of nimble footwork. That's the job for his service, to do that nimble
We are very
footwork.
good at it. We're very,
I
very
hope
good
so.
at it. Yes, I can show you. On that, I have no
Mr.
doubt.
Sharma, you know, something that the Air Marshal was talking about, you know, about what Trump said earlier in the month about India, billions and billions of dollars. Do you believe that Prime Minister Modi is on the back foot now after that comment made by Trump?
Well, Trump is speaking from the standpoint of his election time rhetoric, and he touches a chord with a vast section of the American postmodernist American population, which feels denied the privileges which are being distributed to other countries. I mean, that's the impression there. Like a similar impression is there amongst certain classes in our country. So Mr. Trump is still in the election mode. The unfortunate bit is that Mr. Trump doesn't understand history. He has no appreciation of history. He has little understanding of foreign policy. And as the Air Marshal rightly pointed out, he's not been able to attract talent for some of the key slots in the State Department. Now, coming to Pakistan, the cartographic relevance of Pakistan. I mean, if you look at the map of South Asia, and you'd know why Pakistan is important. Not as much for its own doings on the positive side, but because where it is placed. And as one who had witnessed the great bonhomie in between the Americans and the Pakistanis when the Soviets were forced to leave Afghanistan in the late 80s, early 90s, when the Mujahideen were calling the shots. And I was, in fact, posted in Pakistan at that time. And when the Taliban were created by Najibullah and Robin Raphael. Now, much of the blame of what's happening in Afghanistan and in our region rests at the doorsteps of the Americans.
Right.
And also the Saudis, who were the surrogates insofar as the supply of money was concerned. So, the ball game has changed entirely, and the Americans are impatient. Public opinion within the United States doesn't support the Americans policing the world anymore. And that is where the big question is, whether America will remain relevant globally the way it was until Mr. Trump arrived on the scene, or whether it will be ceding ground to emerging powers and big powers like China. And Russia, mind you, may be a dismembered country, a truncated country, but the Russian ability to challenge the American might, and you know, it remains there.
Sure.
That is what makes Putin a leader amongst his supporters in his country. Because I personally saw, soon after, actually, it's something which I saw in Pakistan, that the ambassador of Russia in Pakistan was standing in the Foreign Office, and he had a big fight with the then Foreign Secretary that he had been wanting to meet the Prime Minister for 3 months, and he has not got an appointment. So, you know, the return of that superpower feeling, even if it is notional, makes Russia take strong positions against the United States.
Indeed, true.
And in Afghanistan, I apprehend that the American role will diminish with the passage of time.
Sure.
And lack of focus of Mr. Trump administration. And unless, of course, he allows himself to be goaded by his specialists, who are far too less today. And their wisdom also is in question.
I'm sorry to cut you short there, but I'm running out of time. So one quick comment on the program, a closing concluding remark from you, Brigadier.
Yeah, first of all, I think we shouldn't make the mistake of underestimating Mr. Trump. He won an election. He is an outsider. He is both against the establishments of Republicans and the Democrats, and that's the reason why he's not liked. That's the reason why he hasn't been able to fill the vacancy positions in the State Department, etc. He is not going to take America to doom. He's a leader in his own right. So let us not underestimate his wisdom. Let's not call him impulsive or unpredictable or something like that. He is going to work for America's interest. I think here is a chance for our Prime Minister to go and establish a proper kind of a sort of a rapport with him. And also, because the American establishment is slow in decision making presently because of the lack of capacity, I think it's good for India, because so far it was America which was driving the agenda. They were faster than us. We are slow in decision making. So I think now we are on an equal footing. And I personally feel that there are a lot of positives in this meeting, in this sort of a meeting that are going to come out from. And Pakistan is, in the negative sense, is important.
Brigadier, I'm sorry I have to cut you short there because I've completely run out of time on the program today. I'll have to call it a wrap on that. Thank you so much to all my guests for joining me on the program and putting things into perspective for us. That's all the time we have. Thank you so much for watching. See you again next time.